are going to get started. For those who have people on their team that can't make today, we will be sharing the video out of this recording. If you have any questions throughout the process, please don't hesitate to put those into the Q&A. I'll address those at the end, but feel free to ask them just as they come top of mind, but I'll try to get everybody's questions answered at the end of today. So today I am going to be talking about recruiting, interviewing, and hiring. I am Lisa Acree. I'm the Vice President here at Chief of Staff. I've got a little over 14 years in the HR industry, but I've now been with Chief of Staff for 5 years. Today we're going to talk about defining what you're looking for when you're recruiting, setting the right foundation, sourcing, building a pipeline, defining what you need. First, you're going to want to list out all the responsibilities that this individual will take on. If this is a position where you have a hole in that they're replacing an individual who's already there today or who has left your organization, this is a really good time to reevaluate all those responsibilities that person held. Do all of those make sense with the individual that you're going to hire moving forward? Should some of those responsibilities move to somebody else's plate? You might also take into consideration that exit interview that you did to see if things should be changed with this position. Is there too much or is there not enough workload? You want to make sure that those responsibilities too will match up to you being able to find a good person for your organization. Too often the biggest mistake that small companies make is trying to find a unicorn. So that person who would be 1 in a million to actually find to fit that spot. And then you're not necessarily getting a great person for your organization. You're just getting someone who happens to be a marketing professional and also an executive assistant, which tend to be two totally different people. Who will they report to? This matters in the very forefront before you even start to try to attract people to your organization. You need to understand what that person's leadership skills are like, what type of person is going to work best with them, what that person wants in this person as well. Personality characteristics. So you want to make sure that this person that you're attracting in not only fits in with your organization's culture, but that individual micro team, and of course, who they report to. So you want to figure out that personality that you're seeking for. What's your timeline for hiring? So obviously this matters too when we're trying to attract the right talent to your organization, is how much time do we have? If this is a new position, then you might have a little bit more time on your side where you really can hunt and try to bring people in. If this is a hole though, and now these responsibilities are on other people's plates and it's adding stress to your organization, you might not have a lot of time. And that might be where you want to look for a temporary fix while you're looking for that right hire. We help a lot of clients in that they need to hire somebody and it's going to be a long search process, but we'll find somebody to at least cover the gap during that time, while we can also help to find that good long-term plug and play fit. Sometimes it's even a consultant. So, Wendy on our team is really good at plugging in for organizations while they're looking to hire that next VP of HR or HR manager, so that payroll still gets done, benefits don't get overlooked, your enrollments are still going to be on time, but she'll plug in for organizations and while we find the right fit to be in there for the long haul. Is there growth potential? This matters when you're attracting people into your organization. And it's okay if there's not growth. If you're a small company like we are, you might not have a complete growth track or a ladder to climb internally, but you need to know that up front. If there's not going to be a growth track, then you want to find somebody who's going to truly be happy doing this position for at least a couple of years, because you don't want a situation where every year or even every 6 months you're turning this over, because that's extremely costly and it's not good for your overall internal processes. If there is growth, then understanding where does that position move to next? Does it move into leadership? Because now we're trying to attract people who can do the job today but have that potential for leadership down the road. So it's good to game plan on all of those areas ahead of time. Know your story and your core values. I can't emphasize this enough, but it's going to go to the whole experience of not only for your candidates, but for making sure, again, we're attracting the right people and bringing them into our interview process. So it's really good, even if you have this urgent need to take the time to figure out who are we? Where are we today? Where are we trying to go? What core values really define us? Setting the right foundation. So again, making sure you already have your core values, they represent your team today, you're constantly evaluating those, defining your culture, making sure your org chart is up to date, your accountability chart, making sure your benefits, your salary, your total compensation budget, all of that's lined up. This is just an example, but for us, these are our core values that we're really ride or die by. We use this in our marketing and branding, and I'm sure you've seen some of those pieces out there. We do try to really show who we are, and that helps us with attracting the right people to our company. So we're authentic, we are real, we are open, we are honest. We like to hire people who are authentic and fit into that piece. So we want to make sure that we are open and honest and that we show that so that we have those right people coming to us. We're inquisitive. Obviously, this is really important in what we do to be really curious. But beyond just the curiosity piece, we're lifelong learners. So it's really important for us that we're attracting people who are genuinely interested in not only people and businesses, but getting better and improving. We have a book club internally where we're always adding a new book each quarter, and then we discuss it every other week of what those last couple chapters are like. Is there anything we could apply internally to make ourselves better? Anything we learned from that piece? The webinar is an example of this too. So this is where we're trying to share out with our community and help other people to develop and learn and get better. We make an impact. So we're really lucky to be in a career field where we get to help people elevate their careers to the next level, get people out of toxic situations and into a better situation for themselves. We're really lucky that we get to help businesses grow. It's really fulfilling on our side that when a company is struggling to find that right fit and we find that person for them. So we want people that find genuine joy in making an impact in the community around them. And we collaborate. This is one of the areas where we really try to differentiate ourselves. And we've created a culture around collaboration, from the style of our office setup to being able to have a really open environment where people can work closely together and are able to talk really quickly. But we're not a good place for that lone wolf. So we don't want to attract people that just want to plug in, plug out, and don't want to work with others. So we try to show that even through our funny videos on TikTok and social media, show that we really do enjoy each other. We enjoy working together. And that creates a better experience in what we do for our candidates and our clients. So when you're defining out your core values, it's important that you don't just list some names down. It's really important too that you don't have a laundry list. We've seen some crazy lists of core values where it's like 20 deep, and some of them are even synonyms with the others. That shows that you're just quickly trying to check something off. Instead, it's really important to figure out, who are we? If you're a new startup or you're going through a change, then maybe it's, who do we want to be? And what are we trying to attract to our organization? This is just a good example of creating an org chart. So Kendall on our team is really good about updating this as we add people. So you can see our newest hire, Owen, has even made it into the org chart. But it's really good for not only your internal team to understand who reports to who, sorry guys, but also in understanding that you have the right chain of command and that you're setting the right tone for attracting people in and being able to show them what that structure looks like organizationally, internally. Helps with your internal communications too, which again will help to attract that right person to your organization. Your accountability chart. So this is where you're going to have every single position in your company, including those that you're trying to add to your company and what's going to be covered underneath each person. So that way, internally, when something new pops up, like you're planning a party, whose responsibility is it to work with the vendors and getting the food and the catering set up? Whose responsibility is it to market out to your clients or your prospects so you're hosting that event? Whose responsibility is it to make sure you have name tags ready, right? So all the responsibilities in your company that keep it moving and growing forward, you want to have that accountability chart. And that will help not only with your internal operations, but again, it's helping with attracting the right people to your organization and just knowing what you actually need and what that person's going to be responsible for internally. Compensation. So this is a big piece. It's ever evolving, and honestly, compensation can change daily. So it's really important to keep on top of the market. This is a free service that we offer to our clients in making sure that they understand what the comp should be with positions. And we often have clients that will tell us, hey, right now, we have a position internally where we're promoting somebody. I just want to know if we are in the right guidelines of compensation. We're happy to help in that area. So we're big karma people. It doesn't have to help us. It doesn't have to be a position that we're working on. We're happy to help and making sure that you do have the right compensation lined up for this position today, not last year, not next year, but right now in this moment to make sure you're going to be competitive. But it's important too to know to make sure that you can afford this position. So that's why you want to have this budget lined out ahead of time. So obviously, there's a lot of variables in pay, and it's going to line out to the exact position in how you have that, the level of responsibility, the experience that you're looking for. It's perfectly fine too to have a range. So I've got a client that I'm talking with that's not quite sure on his next new hire if he wants somebody younger that will grow with him long term, or if he wants more of that plug and play. That's okay. It's okay to be open to that, but you've still got to have that pay lined out of what somebody is going to make if they are 2 years into the business versus if they're 15 years into the business. Obviously, it matters too in a sales position. Are they bringing clients over? Because that's going to play into the pay structure of that. Are they going to be remote or are they going to be in office? Sometimes you can get away if you offer a lot of flexibility in the position as far as fully remote or hybrid in the pay not being as high. People expect if they're driving and they're spending that extra time to come into the office every day, that the pay is going to be in line with that too. So oftentimes they're willing to give up a little bit of pay if they have a lot of flexibility or that ability to work remote in the position. But you want to make sure too that's going to fit into back to your core values of who you are. Is it going to fit into that position? Travel. So if you've got a position where they're going to be expected to travel, that's going to play into pay too. So that pay is going to go up the more travel you have in the position. It's also going to go up depending on the type of travel. So is it just day travel where, maybe they can make it to Springfield and back to Kansas City in that day? Or is it international travel where they're going to be gone from their family for a full week at a time? What percentage is that? So are they traveling once a month for a couple of days versus are they gone 50%? We've obviously seen a huge reduction in travel, even just with this ability to be virtual. But that's gonna structure into your pay. Your location. So that's a big variable. So just yesterday, we were talking with a company that the individual we're going to be working with is based out of St. Louis. And you'd be shocked at how much pay can be variable even from St. Louis to Kansas City. That's why we are so strong in feeling that we work on the Kansas City market. We specialize in this market. So that way, when companies come from California, they come from New York, they come from Chicago, and they're hiring here in Kansas City, they need to understand what the local pay is on that regard. If you are here in Kansas City and you're trying to hire for another state, it's really important that you know, even within that micro city, within that state, what the pay looks like on that side. and the cost of benefits. So that structures it into it too. So Garmin's a local company that's really well known for that they have an amazing benefits package, but they pay less because of that. And they know they can pay less because their benefits are so good. So that's just where you structure this internally and figure out who you want to be and what you want to put more emphasis in. Hours and availability. So obviously this is going to play into it too. So are you an organization that is open 24/7 and do you have to have people working overnight? Obviously, those individuals need to be paid at a higher rate than those people who are working during the day. Availability, is this somebody who has to be constantly on? Are they a property manager where they're going to have to take calls, or they might even have to go and meet with tenants on the weekends outside of their normal hours? All of that again plays into the variables of how you're going to structure that pay. Technical skills. So if you hire IT individuals, obviously you've seen how that can really affect pay and how it can change month to month just according to, what the demand looks like for employees in that space. But the more technical the position, then typically the more variable in pay you're going to have with that. So you need to make sure you're in line for the skills that you need. And then current market conditions. So unfortunately, this can change within a matter of a few weeks. So we've seen the biggest swings in the market that I've ever had in my career these last 4 years. Obviously, the pandemic just really shook things up, where at first we saw a little bit of a lowering, and then we saw such strong demand for good candidates that we were seeing 40, 50% increases in pay. Sometimes it swings just according to what's going on locally. Sometimes it swings because of the demand of that type of position. If you're trying to hire somebody who has a really defined skill set and there's not very many of them in the market, then that can really affect the variables in pay. So I have a good friend who's an attorney, and she's only one of 100 people with the clearance for a position that she was in the running for. So obviously they had to show up and pay appropriately because there was nobody else they could go to locally. So you've got to understand where you stand in terms of the market. The whole package. So obviously, when we talk about your benefits, your pay, your bonus, your commission, all of those pieces play into this total package. But it's good to have all of this defined out ahead of time. So again, you can communicate this out and you can market it so you're attracting in that right person, that right level of person, that right experience, and having all of that together. Benefits is an area where you can get really creative too. So there's a lot of unique benefits that we've seen out there that can help attract the right person. EAPs have become more of the standard and more of the norm the last few years, and there are really reasonable ways that you can add an EAP into your benefits program. But obviously, with a big shift in emphasis in mental health, that's where EAPs really come into play. But there's other aspects to it. So our EAP, for example, not only has the mental health piece where they can get free counseling for themselves and their family, but also financial counseling, because a lot of people don't have that financial literacy from their family growing up. Obviously, we're not taught a ton about that in school, so having that resource for your employees is really good. And people look for those types of benefits when they're looking at companies. Ours has a legal component, and it even has a concierge component where you don't have to, if you're looking for a new daycare, for example, you don't have to scour the internet and make 100 phone calls. Instead, you can call our EAP and they can line all of that out in a nice Excel document. So it saves you time. Oh, and you're not taken out of work to do that. So if you boast about those types of benefits, that could attract the right person. So if you've got, somebody who has a full family and they understand their family is going to be taken care of, they're going to be more apt to want to work for your company than a company where they don't have a good benefits package put together, or they have to go out and find all those resources for themselves. Perks. This is going to depend a little bit on the demographics of your team. So if you've got a relatively young team, food is still, a really good perk to have internally. So whether it's just snacks or doing team lunches, if you've got a team that's healthy or health minded, doing some sort of gym reimbursement, if learning is a part of your organization, then actually backing that up and doing some sort of reimbursement. It doesn't have to be full tuition. It could just, be in allowing them to expense books for professional development or going to professional development events. And then validation. So people want to work for a company that truly cares about them, and who they are, and they don't see them as just a number. So giving that validation in the way that they seek it. And again, highlighting these areas when you're marketing about your team will help attract that right person into your organization. Okay, so sourcing. So this is a part of, again, attracting. You not only want to have those good foundations and that good lineup, but you also want to make sure that you are also going out into the marketplace and finding those individuals. So obviously you can work with chief of staff, work contingent. So it's good to just compare against what's naturally coming into you, posting on your website, scouring LinkedIn, and asking for referrals. So building a pipeline. So it's important to build a pipeline of candidates if you are really in growth mode, or if there's a position for whatever reason you seem to see more turnover in it. Maybe it's a lower level position in your company, um, where you've had some turnover issues. So then it's good to just at least have a pipeline of people that you can go to next, and you're not reinventing the wheel each time. For a sales organization that's in growth mode, it's really good to build a pipeline too, so that you can keep people going through the process to make sure you keep that growth going. So you've got to find what sources are going to work best for you. And this depends on the type of position, it depends on your industry. So a lot of this is looking internally, even using resources like AI to say, this is the type of position that I'm hiring for. What's going to be my best source to go and look for these individuals? Obviously, we recommend partnering with local recruiters. That gives you a tap on the local market and just who's available. A lot of our great clients like to know, just tell me if you have somebody that you think is going to be a good fit for our organization. We're in growth mode. We don't want to miss out on talent. If a recruiter called me and said, hey, I have a recruiter who has a book of business, they don't have a non-compete, would you want to meet with them? Hands down, absolutely. I would want to. So why wouldn't you want to be aware of what talent's available from your industry or your market? LinkedIn. So this is where it's going to depend a little bit on how often you hire. If you don't hire very often, maybe you're a smaller company or you've got a really good hold on your internal team, you've got really low turnover, you're not in growth mode, just the free version of LinkedIn should be fine. That's where you're just going to want to make sure you're talking about what you're doing internally, highlighting those fun things as a team, and then you can use that too to communicate out with your network when you're trying to hire somebody. Recruiter Lite is, let's say you're hiring just a few people a year. So that gives you the ability then to send email messages to potential candidates, letting them know that you're hiring internally for your team. LinkedIn Recruiter, that's really just going to be if you're hiring a high number of people. So it's a pretty costly expense to invest in for your hiring process. So I'd only recommend that if you're hiring 10 or more people in a calendar year. And then looking at job posting forums. There's a lot of free versions out there like Indeed where you can post positions. Look for things that are industry specific too. So that again, you're attracting the right people to your job posting. Make sure that that job posting too is going to attract the right people. So a job posting is a sales tool. I often see job postings where it's so focused on what you want and what you need. You're not even trying to sell. The first part of a job posting should be selling that individual into reading more. You're trying to entice them into your organization. So it's much better for you to have a good number of people to look through than to be counting people out before they're even getting into that information. So if you've got a great benefits package, you've got a strong culture, those are things you're going to want to highlight at the top of that job posting so that again, they're attracted, they want to read more, find out more information, and then you're covering the basis of what do they need to be qualified for that position. Networking groups and professional associations. There's a lot of free networking event groups out there. So again, if you don't hire a high quantity and you don't want to invest a lot of money into these resources of building your pipeline, then join some free groups. Professional associations are great because not only do you have the opportunity to network and have a pipeline of people within your professional industry, but it also gives a learning resource too for yourself and your team. Branding. A lot of people think that marketing and recruiting are separate. I would argue they go hand in hand. So having a presence online is important. So even if you're not selling to the public or you're in a B2B really niche industry, social media is still going to be important in terms of your hiring piece. So that's where you want to talk about what you do, who you are, including photos and videos of your team, highlighting, what your team is doing and the culture of your organization. Having a website that not only clearly shows what you do, but tells the story of who your team is. I've seen far too many companies here locally where when you go to their website, it's unclear what they even do. Now, maybe if you're niche in that industry, you're going to understand it, but if you were trying to attract people outside of your industry, then you want a simplified story of who you are, what you do. We've actually even recently, which shocked me this year, ran into a company that didn't even have a website. It's not important in their industry, and they have so many referrals. They don't need it from a client basis, but now they're seeing how it's making such a bad impact in hiring, because even when they've found someone that they want to attract to their company, they don't look legit, and people aren't comfortable in going to interview there or working there when this company doesn't even have a website. So, a website is really important today, just in terms of your recruiting branding. And again, not just showing who you are, but what you do, and making it engaging and showing how up you are in thumbs. Okay, so I do want to open it up for questions. Give me just a minute. Okay, I'll jump into the chat. And it doesn't look like I see any questions coming in yet. So with that, then we can talk about next week. So this is a two-part series. So next week, we actually have Wendy Hudson of our organization. She's our senior consultant. She has launched a new service at Chief of Staff where she is actually bridging the gap from an HR perspective and helping companies in the interim before they hire that next individual on their HR team. She's got a deep background, and she's definitely one of those unique unicorns in where she started her career in retail and then transitioned into recruiting and then into HR. So she's even helping company with overall business strategies. Somebody I really recommend talking to. She is partnering with Gretchen Adamson, who owns Beyond HR. She has a plethora of knowledge, over 20 years in the HR industry, and she's going to provide a lot of good insight. So today was about attracting the right people into your company. They are going to be talking about how to make sure once that person's got into your interview process that they are the right people for your company. Okay, and it looks like we do have a couple of questions. Kendall asked, what are specific questions you'd like to ask in an interview to help determine if a candidate would be a good culture fit? So that's a great question. What's funny is one of our core values is being inquisitive and curious. And so one of the things I look for is actually how many questions they ask me. And when I ask them, do you have any questions about us or our company? To me, it's a red flag when they don't, because I want someone genuinely curious. One of my favorite questions, because we are more of a sales organization, is understanding the grit that that person has. And a lot of people that have had to overcome adversity show grit. So I'll ask, is there anything difficult you've had to go through, either in your life or your career? Because if people have been through something truly tough, they tend to persevere through those no's that you can get in the sales world. I also love to ask about hobbies and interests. It's not because, I'm going to be off doing those things with them on the side, but it does show who somebody is, as a person. So if they tell me that they play soccer on the side, they grew up playing soccer, well, that tells me that that person's a team player. So I'm pulling little nuggets from that and helping just to build the profile of who that person is and if they're a good fit for us. Briley asks, what's your advice for a candidate that is a culture fit but lacks some of the specific hard skills for a role? So my advice out there is to utilize local resources to learn. So if you're in the HR field, you've got SHRM KC. That's a really good organization for actually building in some skills. Looking for if local colleges offer classes. So when our office manager wanted to improve her skills in QuickBooks, she took a local class with Johnson County Community College where they were teaching advanced skills in QuickBooks. So there's a lot of good local resources for specific skills on that side. Okay. And if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end today's webinar. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you think of questions afterwards. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today.